Okay, good night, or almost good morning actually in Israel. So this will be the 6th chapter of the utility saga. Maybe the last, maybe there will be another one, we will see. I took some time to think in the last couple of hours, also to advance in the art. I've updated a little bit the solar system kind of like component, and also I've rejuvenated the pupa, the one of the three depiction of the full metal jacket, like the intermediate. I mean, we will also have eggs, and we'll also have depiction of like the real thing. And actually, the video from today will help me a lot because it was a very big one, and it's actually I should have taken also stills photographs, but it's very big. So maybe the video will be, generating stills from the video will be enough to actually give me like a good anatomical review of it flying, which will be nice. So this black canvas will be used for, I painted it with black gesso. It was kind of like blue before. It's used for other purposes, also for like symbolic purposes. Anyway, this is kind of like a new one now with black gesso. So it will be used for another representation of the solar system, which will be identical to this one. I mean, in essence, not identical like in actual. Like it will be. This is the standard in the this is the standard kind of like symbolic way to present it. But I will add another one which will be more artistic, but also mostly the major difference is it will be larger. It will take the whole kind of like canvas, and also another major difference is that this will also contain include the several important moons. Moons are also important for the bicycle mechanism. But usually they are not included because this is more like this is very small. This kind of like a presentation can be drawn even in very small scale. So it will be like a more artistic one. But essentially, it will mean the same, just with more details and more artistic. I'll probably not start today, but tomorrow, and it probably will take me some time. But maybe I will even enjoy it. Kind of when I take the time, I enjoy like painting. When I do it just in the kind of frenzy of the voodoo frenzy, which many times this is the case, unfortunately. I lost kind of like my joy, but that's life. You cannot always enjoy what you do. Many times it's like like a voodoo frenzy. It was like that in the past as well. This guy is probably going to be the first time that I'll actually paint I wouldn't say large scale, but moderate scale version of the solar system. I had in the past I thought about creating a diorama, a big diorama of the solar systems with the eggs, with many eggs that I have. And many of the eggs actually resembles moons and planets, but most of it was just destroyed because it was happened. All of this was happened when I lived in Rishon LeZion in my mother's apartment. I was tortured by the people all around, by the neighbors, and then the Shaul, the captain, and this was the huge torture, and I had to destroy most of it. So it didn't materialize. But maybe in the future I'll also create a diorama of the solar system with, who knows, maybe even a moving diorama with some kind of a motor, maybe servo programmable motors. Some might ask, so if the solar system itself, it kind of symbolize the bicycle mechanism, maybe it's not only symbolizes it, but it also generates it. This kind of thought, I mean, derives from very, very, very ancient lines of thinking that was become famous by the followers of Pythagoras, and it was actually become very famous. So I mean, so some people until this day, like I mean, have kind of like awareness of the issue, like I mean, harmony of the planets, and it's kind of like it's got all sorts of like I mean representation in the art, like in mostly Western art. I'm not sure if it's took all in Eastern art as well. I just don't know, but certainly in Western art, it's kind of like I mean, it stays until this day, and sometimes you can see all sorts of like I mean, kind of like it's got like some musical interpretations, like I mean, and but I mean, it's mostly kind of like it stayed like in the thought like of people, like but in a very abstract way, like I mean, I don't think people really understand like what was the meaning behind like I mean the Pythagorean like sort of like harmony of the planets. But it became very famous after Pythagoras and his school. Like I mean, even though it's most certainly, I mean, he did not invent it, Pythagoras. Like I mean, most certainly, I mean, he like it kind of like I mean processed like ideas that existed before him, and so I would say that the question of like whether I mean, so I mean, because if the actual solar system kind of like I mean not only symbolizes like the bicycle mechanism but also generated, so by like why should I mean create any kind of like overriding paintings, like I mean that will like command the Neros to change the way, while the solar system itself I mean is responsible for the way that they act. This is quite philosophical, but I mean the simple answer is that these depictions should reconcile with each other. It means that when I paint, I mean when I paint or draw or create sculpture of I mean of the solar system in order to change the bicycle mechanism, and if I don't want it to be temporary change, like I don't want it to fall back like to the default that is governed by the current state of the solar system. If I actually want it to be permanent, and you need to think about it a lot. I mean, you don't do it in a day. My predecessors haven't done it in a day, and not in 6 days as well. It took more than 6 days. But I mean, even initially, even in like the first iteration of this problem, like the first solution to the problem, actually, I mean, contrary to common belief, actually, I mean, the first time, I mean, this problem actually was solved, it took actually more than 6 days. So I was beginning to say that if the change is something that you really want, like I mean, to be permanent, and you need to think about it a lot, then the idea is that eventually the symbolic representation that you know that are like time limit, you know, whether it's kind of like, you know, because of the drying of the oil paint or drying of the sculpture or almost anything will have kind of like a time limit unless like I mean unless I mean you always like I mean, you know, every day like you repaint it with oil, which is possible, but I mean it's possible to do it, but it's kind of like I mean it's better I mean to create a symbolic machine which would be a sort of perpetuum mobile, like I mean, so it should be like a perpetual movement. Like doesn't necessarily need to be completely perpetual, you know, 100% perpetual, but I mean, even if it takes like, if I mean, it's kind of like I mean, if it's a machine that can I mean that can move like for millions of years or billions of years, I mean, it's perpetuum. It's enough perpetual to be called like perpetuum, like machina or perpetuum mobile. I mean, like the perpetual moving machine. And the best way to do it is to actually to change the actual machine. Like the idea of perpetual machine was kind of like, I mean, or perpetual moving machine was also like, I don't know who invented like the concept, but almost certainly I mean, it was already well known during the Middle Ages, but I must say that I am not sure it's like the Romans. I'm not sure the Romans and the Greeks actually, probably yes, but I'm not certain about it. That they kind of like they had the idea already in their mind. Did they? I mean, it's easy to check it. Like, I mean, is it like did it start in the ancient time? I'm not sure, or maybe it's only medieval concept. But I mean, it was strongly like, I mean, it was very like a known like a kind of like, I mean, like concept of like, I mean, in the Middle Ages it was already like well known like as kind of like as a both holy grail for like, I mean, alchemists or scientists, or like, I mean, all sort of like people that are, I mean, that like stand in the border of like science and religion and superstition and magic and things like that. And such people still exist. And but I mean, as a kind of, I mean, knowledge of physical world, I mean, progressed. I mean, it became like, I mean, this kind of like an abstract concept became kind of like, I mean, both on the one hand, like, I mean, a symbol of impossible, like, thing that, I mean, that is represented by like a machine, in kind of like in a broad sense, like, of the use of the term machine, machina, and also, like, maybe kind of like, I mean, at the same time, kind of like inspiration for kind of like indefinite future of like, presumably kind of like, I mean, the Garden of Eden of physics, where, I mean, such thing would be possible, like, I mean, it's become something that, I mean, that even if so, it's by definition, almost by definition, impossible. Like, it might, I mean, it might not be like futile to actually like think of how to build it, because maybe the process itself could be like, I mean, could teach us a lot, and also maybe it's kind of like, I mean, preparation, you know, for the end of days, like, I mean, for kind of like a new time for humans where such thing would be possible. Basically, I mean, just a perpetual movement. I mean, the idea is that a machine cannot perpetually be moving because of, I mean, basically because of friction. Even though this is like a modern kind of, this is pretty modern kind of like an articulation of problem here. The problem was understood in ancient times, like, or at least in medieval times. That's kind of like, I mean, not kind of like, I mean, the specifically like the physical constraints of friction and generation of heat by movements, like in kind of like a medium, but more in a more philosophical way, like, or religion way, like, I mean, that everything is kind of like, I mean, is decaying, and everything is like loses energy, and I mean, they had a concept. I mean, again, like, I mean, you can somehow equate it to the modern idea of entropy, but of course they didn't know anything about thermodynamics, and it's anachronism to think that they knew what is entropy. But they had coming from precognition of the concept of entropy, of like, I mean, of the tendency of things to become less ordered with time. And because of this, I mean, they thought, like, in the medieval time, and probably also ancient times, that no machine can, like, I mean, can move forever, or in the broader, like, in general sense, cannot work. No machine can work forever, like, I mean, without, I mean, again, I mean, in the modern time, we would say without, like, an external source of energy. But of course, this is also kind of like an anachronism to say it, because the idea of energy was not known even by Newton, certainly not in the medieval ages. But I mean, their conceptualization of what we would call, like, in our time, in terms of source of energy, is that, I mean, they had the idea of like mover and things that are moved. Again, you can see it in like it's very well, like, I mean, it's used a lot in the philosophy of Thomas Aquinas. But of course, I mean, not only him, but I mean, it's kind of like he's pretty famous, and especially in Christian circles up to this day, and so he uses these terms a lot. But these terms were widely used by Christian philosophers and Jewish philosophers and Muslim philosophers. Like the idea of like of movement is kind of like in a broad sense, like as causation. Like the mover is the one that causes something to be moved, and also like he also like he is the cause of this thing. I won't get too much into it, but they didn't have like the in the medieval time the notion of energy, but the way that they understood it, that no machine can like move forever without a mover that moves this machine. Like not only like one time, like but like you need always to move it, or for some time you need like to remove it, to remove the machine. Or yes, and again in our terms, which would be alien to people of the medieval ages, but we would use the term energy. That that it requires like an external source of energy, or maybe in the way that Newton would have said it, like external source of momentum, which is kind of something that is similar to energy, but before like the physical kind of like constitution of what exactly is energy. But of course, all these people, like in ancient times and in medieval times, they did understand that that the solar system, or in a broader term, like the spheres of like what's called the spheres, like the sky is kind of a machine. They understood it very well. It was well understood by many people that this is a kind of machine. And again, it was already even like in the time of Pythagoras, it was articulated that very famously that this machine creates some kind of music, presumably, and not only music, but perhaps only also like harmonies that are not well understood today. But because the general concept stayed, but not but much of the of the related of the details were lost. And Pythagoras himself didn't write anything, and his old school was very, on the one hand, very secretive, on the other hand, very kind of influential. But so much was lost. But in any case, he didn't invent all these issues. For certain, it existed before him. So just to say that the concept of a solar system itself, or I would say like the spheres of the sky, the celestial bodies, as a machine, this is not kind of like a new kind of like a kind of a breakthrough kind of an interpretation of reality that I invented in order to surprise you. This is actually well known by humans thousands of years. It's like they had this idea of the machine, of the celestial bodies as a machine. And it should be said that this machine was, to some extent, in medieval times and after that, kind of like the model for perpetuum mobile, for the perpetual moving machine. Because according to observation, that's exactly what's happening. It's a machine that's constantly moving, and people did not but even like rare and unusual components of this machine, like comets. It was known that they that they are part of the that they are recurring events, they're cyclical events, cycling events, not only famously by priests of the Maya, as is depicted in the movie Apocalypto, but and also very known that the Mesoamerican cultures They had, I mean, they're known for like, I mean, probably human sacrifice, and also that they had this ball game that is very unique and was tremendously popular. Like, I mean, and also, I mean, probably that, I mean, that they had like kind of like, I mean, unique knowledge in astronomy that allowed them to predict like the coming of comets and like how do you say like a likuei chama, like I mean that I don't remember the English term, like I mean that the sun is like I mean is covered like partially or completely in the middle of the day, like it's blocked by the moon. So it should be said that I mean it's amazing, but it's actually not unique for them. Actually, other cultures in the past actually also had such information, and some of it actually appeared even in the Talmud. Like I mean, even though mostly the Jewish scribes, I mean, of the ancient time, was not interested at all at what we would call science. I mean, but even them that science was not their cup of tea. They had some like knowledge of science, including like I mean the knowledge of like I mean the cyclical nature of comets and things like that. So, like, and they were not like they were not like even that kind of like the knowledge of scientific issues, even like I mean related to scholars of their time, was not that big. Like I mean, like the people of the Talmud, like of the Mishnah or the Talmud, and but even then even then they had some like I mean enough in like astronomical like knowledge to know that I mean that very rare events like such as the specific like I mean like appearing of comets is something that is cyclical in nature. And also they had some numbers, like I mean specific even they have some specific numbers. So I mean it's not only the Mayans that like I mean, and I speak about like times like before, like thousands of years before, like I mean the Mayans actually know this stuff. But even them, they were not the first at all to know these things. So what I try to say that I mean a lot of astronomical knowledge regarding this perpetuum mobile was known since very, very ancient times, mostly because people didn't have television. I mean that's the main reason. I mean the invention of the television dramatically decreased. I mean, first of all, the radio, but then the television, like, I mean, dramatically decreased the time that people spend watching the stars. This was, like, I mean, the major source of entertainment besides sex for, I mean, millions of years. Like, millions of years, people, like, I mean, their entertainment was either sex or watch the stars. That's the way it is. So they gathered tremendous amount of information, like, I mean, that was kept like I mean by and transmitted between generations. So they were able to know like amazing stuff that I mean some people can today like I mean are wondering like how did they know that? Was it aliens that I mean aliens told them like I mean it's going to be like a comet will appear? No, aliens did not tell them. It's just that I mean that they watched like stars for a long time. And they recorded the data and they transmitted it like between each other, and that they had enough like mathematical some of them, I mean not all of them, but I mean some people had enough mathematical like proficiency in order to generalize like the data and to deduce like all sorts of like I mean results like I mean that include something like what you see in the Apocalypto movie, which is again not actually at first, yes, such thing happened, but it's actually less of a rarity than what you would I mean many people think. Like I mean that yes, I mean ancient cultures knew about this stuff, like I mean because they because they didn't have television, like I mean so that's what they did, like besides sex. So, I mean, or football, which was basically just, I mean, a huge fight, and was extremely popular all over the world, and it still is. But I mean, the version of it is very, like the soccer version is more common today, which is not that violent. But I mean, it was extremely football was, I mean, for like many hundreds of years was extremely popular. Just I mean, it's just people just hit it, and they like to break the bones of each other. Like I mean. That's what they did. They didn't have many, like, I mean, opportunities for entertainment. Like, I mean, entertainment was something that, I mean, yeah, famously, in Greek times, they had, like, all sorts of dramas, and they had, like, I mean, great achievements, like, and then the Romans had the Colosseum, and but yeah, these are exceptions, like, I mean, that were amazing, but I mean, most humans, like, throughout, like, history, and certainly prehistory, did not live in Athens or in Rome in its greatest glory. They lived in all sorts of, like, I mean, shitholes, like, all over the world, and they didn't have, like, entertainment at all. I mean, the entertainment is kind of like something that, I mean, that is widespread, and almost anyone that had access to it. Is something that started basically in the 20th century, and somewhat also in the 19th century. Before that, I mean, what kind of entertainment did you have? Again, sex, one option, football, which means, like, breaking the bones of other people, and watching the stars. So when you understand that, it's not that, I mean, it's not that kind of surprising that, I mean, they had amazing knowledge of people, like, humans had amazing knowledge of, like, of the recurring nature of the changes in what you see, like, in the stars that you see. I mean, you just look above, and they understood that this is kind of a machine that can be predicted, and like, I mean, it affects all sorts of things that, I mean, and it was always the kind of, like, I mean, question for everybody, like, what exactly this machine kind of, like, I mean, because I mean, almost everyone, like, I mean, understood, like, in countries all over the world, that this machine affects them, but how exactly, it was kind of like a mystery that, I mean, that it is still a mystery to this day. Like, I mean, it's still a mystery. Like, what I present now is something that is probably not known to I mean, and I mean, if you have a kind of, like, a suspicion that I'm kind of like astrologist, then, I mean, I can understand you. But no, it's not astrology. But yeah, I mean, astrology is kind of like, I mean, it's another common way to think, like, how this machine affects you. But the people, like, had all sorts of like, very bizarre ideas, like, how it affects them. Even though some effects are very noticeable, like I mean, covering, I mean, like, night in the middle of the day, like, I mean, you see in the Apocalypto movie. And yes, people knew about such things, and that they can be predicted, like, thousands of years ago. That's a fact. The idea is not to override the machine, but the idea is that if you really want to change the bicycle mechanism that is governed by the solar system itself and affect the solar system, it's best to change the solar system. But of course, you don't do it, like, I mean, in a sleight of pen. You think about it. So in the long term, there should be a reconciliation between the paintings, if they are important, and the solar system. You can ask, I mean, but how can you change the solar system? So the answer is that, how did you create the solar system? Well, it wasn't easy, but eventually it was done. Listen, these are, I'm just lying to you all the time. The Venusians, the Titans, they do not like, feed on radioactive material, okay? This is stupid. Also, they are not dinosaurs, and they were not created, like, I mean, from, like, I mean, they were not found, like, as stone, like, I mean, like terracotta, like the terracotta soldiers in China. No, no, no. And they were not. This is all stupid. Also, The Israelis do not have any radioactive mining operation in Israel. Not in the Dead Sea, not in any other place. There was never any kind of, substantial, natural reserves of radioactive material in Israel. There is nothing in there. Israel is a very small country and most of it is desert that contains nothing, not even like oil and no gold, no silver, a little bit of copper, in Timnah, but it was always famous that, this country is Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash, that is, it's blessed with, milk and honey, but don't expect uranium, plutonium, or any kind of ore, or, not even, trees, even wood was imported from other countries, in biblical times, famously, by Solomon, and even before that, just Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash, nothing else. Certainly not uranium, certainly not plutonium, no steel, no iron, no iron ores, very little amount of water, drinkable water, Chalav and Dvash, milk and honey, that's it. No more. No more. If you want gold or silver or diamonds or uranium or plutonium or iron ore or I don't know what, aluminium, then you need to get it from another place. Only milk and honey, not more than that. That's what God promised you, and that's what you will get at most. I don't see any place in the Bible where it says that the land of Israel is blessed by the uranium and plutonium deposits. And I believe that if it was important enough, you could find it in the Bible, but you cannot. So it's not true. As usual, answers in the Bible. So what? Do they? Maybe they mine Venus. Now that you understand that they have targets, more than one. So maybe they mine it in Venus. Not exactly. Their approach to Venus was always cannibalistic and barbarian. They don't know almost nothing about Venus, which is surprising. But it's amazing how small information, hard info is available to people in Israel. Inside the Israeli intelligence community regarding Venus, and many of them actually they eat their own shit. Many of them actually do not know that the foreigners arrived from Venus. They typically in kind of in very typical in absurd ways. But I learned to acknowledge the fact that this is part of life. That intelligence services invent theories and then start to believe it. They forget that they themselves invented. So no. They know so little about Venus. They were always like that. It was always so barbarian. The approach was so barbarian. Also, another cute thing that they have done there is that they detonated a small nuclear bomb in Venus, which was very, very cute, a very cute thing to do. And it was forgotten even by them, so I understand why many people all over the world don't know about it. But I'm sure that some people do know about it. Yes, this kind of ignorance regarding the Venusian slave trade and the Venusian existence. I learned to understand that this. You're not faking it. Not all of you. Some of you. Many of you actually do not know nothing about it. You're completely clueless, ignorant. This includes both the titans, the foreigners themselves, and also people of the intelligence services of this world. So yes, maybe now that you send some probes, presumably you have some hard info. Even though what's hard info? But maybe I speak about it some other time. Hard info is a mythology in itself. But I cannot speak about everything all at once. Maybe I'll remind me if I forget, to speak about Carl Sagan's last book, Olam Baduf Shedim, I don't remember like the English title, like I mean the original title. I mean a ghost, a demon-hunted world. I read it. I mean, just when it was published. Like I mean, it was translated to Hebrew almost right after it was published in English, and then Carl Sagan died. I mean, it was just after he died. Like, and I read it like I mean when it was very new. Like I mean, I was pretty young. I was maybe 11 or 12 years old, and it affected me very much. Like I really, I mean, I learned a lot from this book. In retrospect, not exactly, I mean, his intentions, but I mean, whatever. I mean, it's, you mean many times like you read something and kind of, I mean, that's why I mean, it's one of the reasons why I mean, it's so. I think that I mean, censoring books is completely stupid, and I'm totally against it. Even though many people, like in the past and even today, like I mean, that belongs to all sorts of like religion groups, like I mean, was pro censorship, but I'm completely against it. Like, I think you should be allowed to read almost anything at all, and that I mean, that you shouldn't be afraid of that, because I mean, Carl Sagan was a staunch atheist, and it's something that I mean you see all over, like I mean, like all over like his life, like I mean, as a science, like I mean, kind of like a poster boy for science, and like I mean, and like Isaac Asimov and Martin Gardner and other people, like I mean, of a generation that I mean, it was kind of like I mean, like public speakers, like I mean, with related issues related to science, and all of them were kind of like atheists, and especially him, and some of them were actually anti-religion, but it doesn't. You can, I mean, it doesn't mean that if you read their books, you become atheist like them. It might be exactly the other way around. It's because, I mean, it's not that if you read like someone's book, I mean, if it's a good book, I mean, you might reach any kind of a conclusion. I mean, it doesn't really matter what was the views of like the specific person that wrote the book. I can tell you that I mean, this book, like I mean, regarding I mean, like his last book, certainly he didn't write it like promote religion. Like I mean, he was never like that, and certainly not in his last like statement to his last statement to humanity. He did not intend it to be like pro-religion in any way. But I can tell you that I interpreted that as a child, and still to this day, like as something that I mean, strength. It made my belief stronger. And it's not that like peculiar, because if something is really well written and like so it might serve like the complete like the opposite purpose of like I mean of actually the person that written it. And this is not a new it's not like postmodernism. I mean, not that I have anything against postmodernism. I don't have anything against it. I'm like pro postmodernism, but it should be said that this kind of like idea was also, I mean, you can find it in ancient times. Like I mean, it's not like postmodernist like in itself, like the idea that I mean that sometimes like I mean the opposite like view is I mean it's important to learn the opposite view in order I mean like I mean to understand like I mean the correct view. So maybe some other time I speak about this book, but I mean the whole question of like I mean what's hard info, I mean, because it's mostly all social. Like I mean, people like I mean differentiate between truth and false, like by social like I mean mechanism. Like I mean, but by I mean watching like people around them, like I mean, and see what they think, and like that's how they kind of like I mean judge like what's true and what's untrue. So yes, I mean there is so much ignorance, but some of this ignorance is fake. Like I mean some of the ignorance is faked, both by Israelis and by people abroad, because they don't want they don't want to admit that they committed so many crimes and they still commit crimes. But yes, during the 1980s, there were many things that happened, and I spoke about it a lot in this Bicycle Saga and other videos. But one of the things that happened is that the Israelis were punished tremendously so. I mean, and I spoke about it quite a bit. And the punishment happened in several ways, but one of the most severe way was a huge increase of radiation that in itself was not new. It was a cyclical event that happened for decades before that. And it's going on today. I mean, it's probably now stronger than ever, like right now. But it's a cyclical event, like that is carried. I mean, it's executed by spaceship that is here. I don't know from where, but I guess about like 100 years. It's here since before the actual the Israeli was established. Because as I said, the subjugation of the Titan started during Ottoman times, like the late Ottoman times, with Zionism. So the radiation increased tremendously, and many people died, not only in Israel but also abroad. Mostly those that ate the tea, or the drug, were most susceptible to the radiation, just like to now. This is not new, but there was a huge increase. So it's kind of like a retaliation against the cherubs, against my species. They decided to nuke Venus because they are assholes, and they always have been. And they did it. The good news is that it wasn't like a huge, it was just a small atomic weapon, not a very big one, which is kind of like, somewhat good news. And some more good news is that, it's kind of like archipelago, Venus. They have quite a bit of land, but, it's scattered. Mostly, the island was like decimated, but so it's very sad. But it's not that and it's not like Hiroshima. They don't have cities. They don't have so it's very sad. But it didn't destroy Venus completely. Arguably, it's much more worse. Like the things that the spread of disease that they've done. Either intentionally or not, and they've done it since the beginning of the 20th century, was had much worse effect. But nevertheless, they did it. They used nuke against civilization that cannot protect itself at all, and was not in any way they did not attack them at all, and couldn't attack them because they don't have technology almost at all. Just as they did it as a retaliation against innocent people that cannot even cannot do anything to them. Just because a sad civilization was too strong for them to fight. So they said, okay, we cannot retaliate against the cherubs because they are much stronger than us. So let's nuke Venus. So they decimated like an island or something like that. Which of course is terrible, but it should be said, the terrible thing was the most terrible thing is the disease-related issues that they've done there. Probably this hurted many more people. But it's not that nice that to nuke another planet. So as a retaliation, the cherubs, my own species, decided that we cannot continue, to let these monkeys in Earth, use these toys because they use it irresponsibly. So they decided, that no more nukes. And actually, just to make sure that there are actually no more nukes, also no more uranium and plutonium, including in the ground. Because look what they do. These idiots, these monkey Homo sapiens idiots. That's stupid. That's too stupid and irresponsible. So, and יעשה שלום במרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו. And that's how peace came to be. And since then, everybody lives in peace because there are no nukes. But not exactly. Not exactly. Not exactly. Because there are some nukes, not now. Actually, now there are zero, as I said yesterday. I mean, currently the number of nuclear warheads that are, are operational in Earth currently now is zero, but it wasn't always like that. And there are all sorts of things that happened. Currently, it's zero. But there is also the question of nuclear energy, both for aircraft carriers and submarines, and also for power plants. And some of them, it's not mythology; they exist. Not to, to a lesser extent than what some governments say. Government over report the actual uses of nuclear energy, both in the navies and in the power plants. But it's not a mythology. Yes, they still exist to this day. And they rely on radioactive material. So what happens here? So I will discuss all of that in the next chapter, which I will start very soon. But I want to prepare a cup of coffee, like real coffee, not a metaphorical. Stop thinking that everything is a metaphor. Just a coffee. Sometimes the coffee is just a coffee.